Als je nu praat, dan ga je gelijk over de speakers. Dus
Dan zou ik het net houden.
Zijn we nu ook live? Moet ik dan al gaan presenteren? So, hello, everybody who's here. Thank you for coming. Also, thank you to everybody who is watching online. For those who haven't been here before, the Eindhoven Innovation Café is a weekly networking event where we give people a platform who have developed an idea, a project, a concept on the intersection of design and technology. Tonight we have Jeroen ter Schiphorst from Lusoco as a guest to talk about fluorescent inks to use in visual communication. He can see you, so you can wave, yes. But obviously can guess that he has tested positive for corona, but fortunately he was still able to come and present for us in this way. So thank you again for this. Yeah, drinks and a meal afterwards are still possible at the meetup table, taking to mind that the prices have changed of the meetup table, but we'll get to that later. And for now, with no further ado, I will leave it up to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and if one thing was learned during both the pandemic as well as my journey as a startup is that changed a lot, so you have to adapt to it. So I'm very happy to get the opportunity to present here today, although I would have loved to have some drinks afterwards with you. It will be just a digital session today. But the goal for today is to show you the magical and wonderful world of fluorescence. And those are the kind of materials that we are working with. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. So we know all fluorescence from nature, as we find that a lot of man-made materials are actually inspired by nature. And here on the background, you can see a couple of examples of minerals. These kind of minerals, they start to illuminate once you illuminate them with UV light. So they're able to absorb light and they're able to emit light again. Now, of course, this is set in stone, but you can also find these kind of concepts back in nature. If you, for instance, take a jellyfish, which is a prime example from the biological field, which has grown the biological field a lot, you will find that jellyfishes are able, in some cases, to start to fluoresce when illuminated with the right wavelength of light. Now, to give you an idea on the kind of materials we're working on, don't worry, this will be the only scientific slide that I will be showing, but here to give you a small impression on what it actually means. So in this graph, you can see here on the bottom left, this is a molecule in its standard state, and it's low in energy. But the molecule can interact with light, and light, of course, is energy. So once a molecule starts absorbing this light, it will go to a higher energetical setting. And it would love to release this energy again. Now, this can be in a couple of different examples. For instance, it can start to heat up, something that you see a lot, but it can also start to emit light itself. And if it starts to do that, it will be in the form of fluorescence. Now, you have light, it is being absorbed and it is being emitted again, so you get a glowing effect. Now, of course, the second principle that can happen is phosphorescence, and we all know this as the glow-in-the-dark principle. But for today, I will only focus on fluorescence because it happens faster, it's instantaneous, so after switching off your illumination, also the material becomes dark again. Now, and as humanity, as scientists, we have been working on this material over the last years, and they're also implemented on a large scale. So the next time you look at your passport and you start to illuminate these with the right wavelengths of light, you will see that a part of your passport starts to illuminate. And here in this slide, you can see a couple of examples of materials that are able to fluoresce. And on the bottom right, perhaps the most well-known material nowadays, quantum dot materials made in your television. Those kind of materials allow us to create images that are glowing. And this is exactly what Lusoco is doing. So we are not focusing so much on televisions, we are focusing on printing fluorescent inks. So what we do as a company is we seek fluorescent materials, we add these materials in an inkjet printable matrix, and that allows us to create an image that is being printed, as you can see here on the bottom right, on the equipment that you can see there. So we focus on fluorescent particles and fluorescent molecules to have them as happy as they can be in an ink matrix, and then we drag them to our printer and we place them in there. And that allows us to create all kind of different images. And with those kind of images, you can do something very special, and I will show that later. But before going into that, I already said there are many fluorescent materials on the market. As a company, our fluorescent inks are the only one in the market that are focusing on efficiency and brightness. And this is required to create a wide spectrum of new applications. And we aim to design the world using these fluorescent inks to create this revolution in visual communication. And in the next couple of slides, I will give you some examples of things that we did, but also future plans that we have. So if you take these fluorescent materials, and as you can see here in this image, you can place them, for instance, on the so-called waveguide, a piece of plastic or a piece of glass, you can make use of waveguiding principles. So you have a red ink, a green ink, and a blue ink, and they're able to absorb light. And as I just showed you, this light is being exited from the molecule again in the form of fluorescence. And if you now do this at a material that has a high refractive index, so a polymer or a glass, you kind of create a 2D optical fiber effect. So what you see is you have your printed image, and you can see that a lot of the light here is being concentrated to the edges of this device. And that allows you to absorb light on a wide area and focus it on a very narrow band. Now, next to this, you can also reverse this principle. So if you place LED illumination with the right wavelength on these edges, and you start sending light through these plates, you can actually reach the plate, and you can have the three different colors that we printed here, illuminating either all at the same time, or you can do them one by one. Now, if you start combining these two principles, so on one hand, we're able to absorb light and concentrate it to edges. On the other hand, we're able to have illumination from these prints. You can create a closed system where, together with a solar cell and a battery, you are able to harvest light during the day, store this energy via a solar cell into a battery, and then use this battery to power up LED illumination during the night to create images that are extremely well readable while having very minimal energy consumption. Now, this can be, for instance, applied in the signage world. So on the left of this image, you can see how signage is actually looking. You see a lot of digital signs, but on the bottom right of the slide, you can also see that we still make a lot of use of static signage. And here, we all know this example where you are at the train station at night and where you see a finely illuminating sign, a simple sign that shows you, for instance, a road map or the metro train stations. Now, what most people don't realize is that these signs take about 300 kilowatt hours a year per sign, and they are often very poorly readable. And this is because these materials are not fluorescent. You are looking at a printed image where light is either from the front or from the back illuminating the image, and you are looking at the contrast. So that results in strong lamps, low readability, and high light pollution. Now, if you then take Europe as one party, you will see that we use about 1.2 megatons of CO2 equivalent every year simply to have these kind of signs illuminated. And to give you an idea, we have about 20,000 train stations in Europe, so we have a huge potential to reduce these illuminating conditions. Now, if you would try to compensate for this 1.2 megaton of CO2 in Europe, it would require almost 48 million trees to compensate for this. Now, what we did at Lusoco, actually with the municipality of Eindhoven at Stripe S, we got a request to have a wayfinding map that is illuminated during the night so that the people leaving the building know where they are and where they can orient. But one of the major conditions and the major questions that we had from the municipality was that this sign has to be off-grid because it was not possible to have an energy connection there. And next to that, they also didn't want to have the energy being wasted. So what we did is we employed our technology here in this printed image. And on the sides, we have our solar cells. And on the top part, we have our illumination. And this allows us to create these wayfinding maps at Stripe S to inform the customers of Eindhoven better and to have these signs completely off-grid. So that is the first example where we used our technology in a real-life environment. But the importance of illumination is bigger. Here on the top right, you can see an example of a Ring doorbell we all know the Ring doorbell, of a sign there that is being illuminated. And on the bottom, you can see a sign that is not illuminated. And after some market questions with over 94 points that were requested, it was found that having a illuminated sign was the top one priority to have at your security system. It is not to have the most sophisticated camera. It is not to have a sophisticated alarm. It is not to have all kind of motion and smoke detectors. No, a simple illuminated sign that shows that your property is being protected is actually the best way to keep burglars out. But to achieve this, the technology was not there yet until we made use of our fluorescent inks together with our energy harvesting properties. And this is exactly what we're doing with our launching customer, who has over 4 million customers of themselves, and where we are creating these signs. And unfortunately, due to confidentiality, I can't show you how the final product looks like. But here on the left, you can see a sign. And here on the right, you can see how we are implementing our solar cells that allows us to operate the sign completely off-grid. And this sign can be hanged anywhere outdoors. That allows you to deter your burglars and to have this image glow during the night. Now, this is the revolution that we are being part of. So the revolution towards cleaner signage. I already showed you that 1.2 megatons of CO2 equivalents are being wasted every year to have illuminated signs, which would be about the size of the province of Utrecht that would have to become a forest. Now, on the right side, I already showed the new applications, so the security signage and the wayfinding signage, but also the existing applications can benefit from the technology that we use. For instance, a simple emergency sign where you currently don't have a fluorescent illuminating sticker. If we would just replace those stickers with our technology, we will be able to save 4 to 20 times the amount of energy that we are currently using. And next to that, also create a sticker that is better readable, both during the day, during the night, or in case of an emergency where you have smoke, and having illumination there would be key. Now, next to this, you can also see, for instance, a sign of a train station, where, as I already said, we have 20,000 train stations in Europe. If we would simply be using our technology and reduce the amount of illumination there, we could go for both better readability as well as the 4 to 20 times less energy usage. And this is how it looks like in real life. This was the first pilot that we made at the customer, which is Van Happen Containers in Eindhoven. You can actually visit this one to look at it yourself. And here we had the request to have a welcome sign that is completely off-grid, that is well readable. And here again, we have the LEDs on the top, we have the solar cell in the bottom, and this sign is able to illuminate throughout the entire year with the energy it's harvesting itself. So the future of signage, in our opinion, should be off-grid and net zero illumination. So in a couple of years, I hope that when I'm passing by a train station, that I will see some illuminating glass there that isn't requiring as much energy as it currently is, or it is able to generate this energy itself. And next to that, I also hope to see images that are better readable than the current devices that are present. But this is not where we stop as a company. As I said, fluorescent materials are very inspiring, and we like to use them in various different markets. So next to signage, we're also looking into automotive. And as you might know, currently there are sophisticated head-up displays, as you can see here on the bottom right, where you can have projections of information within your screen. On the other end, you might have also seen an illuminated rooftop from BMW, where, for instance, they make use of white dots to scatter light, and that allows you to create a sunroof that is illuminated. Now, why is this interesting? It was actually found by a market research by IDTechX that the cockpit is the new battleground where we are currently shifting. It is no longer important what is underneath the hood, especially with electric cars. We can make any electric car fast. It is now happening really in the cockpit to create the customer experience and to create benefits in that place. Now, if you take a look at a couple of examples there, you will find, for instance, that the Polestar has a projector with its logo. You will find the windows that I already showed you that are able to illuminate, but you will also find OLED technology within the glass. Now, if you take a look at our technology, what we can do there, especially for the titanium dioxide scattering materials, It is very hard to create a green circle within the red area here, simply because the material is following the color of the LED. And in our case, if we make use of fluorescence, the ink itself is determining the color. So it allows us to go for very sophisticated images that are invisible during the day and that we can have illuminate during the night. And I would like to show you a small example here. So if we take a look at our image again that I showed previously, if illuminated with the right wavelength, we're able to get only red light out of this device. Now, if we switch to a different wavelength, we can go for red and green coming out of this device. And if we do this even at better illumination conditions, we can have the red, green, and blue all living next to each other. And it allows us to do this without crosstalking on a high resolution, but as you can also see, completely invisible during the day and only present during the night. And this is the second way that we want to revolutionize illuminate visual communication, not only looking at signage and energy harvesting, but also use these materials in other vertical markets. Now, for instance, in a rooftop, where you can have an image that is completely invisible during the day, but at demand, you can have a rooftop that is completely illuminating, making use of our fluorescent inks. Now, next to that, you can also think about having infotainment systems in your side windows, and especially for autonomous cars or for your blinker lights in your car. You could have an image that is not present during the day, so you can just watch through the window, but with our fluorescent materials later on and with the right illumination, you can have multiple images on a single window that start to illuminate on demand. I hope with this that I gave you a small insight on what we are doing as a company. Our products, it's not only a concept that we are currently working on, but our products are really out there in the field. So I would like to invite you at Van Happen Containers or Stripe S to have a look at these signs to see how they look like. And for the next steps for the security signage, I hope that they will be soon on your facade once we have them launched with our launching customer, hopefully by the end of the year. And for the automotive glass, we are currently working with over 8 parties within that domain. And at the end of the year, we also expect this technology to be in a concept car to be shown at the trade show. And within the next 5 years, we hope that this technology will be widespread for you to have this and to have better readability. Now, this is how we revolutionize visual communication. And unfortunately, I'm not here today to also have a drink and have a discussion on this later. So feel free to contact me on the email address below if any questions occur afterwards, or feel free to come by for a cup of coffee and have a look at what we are doing at Lusoco. Thank you very much for this opportunity at the Kazerne. And I'm ready for any questions that have arisen.
Yeah, you can ask a question and then I'll just hang around so he can hear you properly.
So, can you only produce static images or also video images? At least in my...
Yeah, so it's... sorry?
Yeah, for me, it's now the impression I have, don't be offended, is that it's now only mainly for static images, so you can, for signing.
No, that's absolutely true. We create static images, and we get this question a lot, especially people saying we are moving to a digital age. But for the security images that I showed you, it doesn't have to be dynamic, it can be static. No, if you take this, for instance, also for road signage, often these signs are still static. So around us, you will find a lot of static images.
But also, because also you show the heads-up display, but in my... imagination heads-up display is kind of dynamic. It's not fast-moving images, but it's not static. So how do you manage with that?
That's definitely true. A head-up display often is a dynamic device, especially if you take a look at the speed or the guard meter in there. But for instance, to have blinking lights, so your blinkers in a car, those elements can be static, or a message displayed on the side window that can be static, or a security warning, a stop warning, those kind of images we are looking for. We're not here to replace the head-up display. We are in between the head-up display that is very sophisticated with projectors and OLED technology, and the static images that are currently being created by titanium dioxide printing. So they
Also-
will live next to each other.
Yeah. Like for the speed signs, you can use maybe the IDs from the old-fashioned alarm clocks that everybody had at home to, with the 8 lines to.
Yeah, so those are great opportunities. Interestingly enough, we are getting approached a lot by the automotive to mostly use these kind of things for aesthetics in a roof window, to create a moonroof or a sunroof that is transparent during the day and that we can illuminate during the night.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting talk. I was just curious, if I understood correctly, it works with solar panels or solar energy. But with cars and so on, if they're parked in a garage or like the Netherlands, half of the year it's not that sunny, but do you need a lot of light to get it powered or not really? Is it just enough light? Because I presume it's not that energy intensive. What you use it for?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's kind of twofold. In automotive nowadays, we have batteries that go up to 75 kilowatts or even 100 kilowatts, where we generate really a couple of watts of energy. So for automotive, we do not include the solar cells. We make mostly use of the fluorescent effect because the battery is already present anyway. So in that case, we don't use solar technology, especially for the signage market. And because we make use of an active illuminating material rather than a static material that is reflecting, really with very, very minimal amounts of light, we are able to create an image that is glowing. And what we found there is with milliwatts, we're able to create an image that is glowing during the night that is really well visible. So it really depends on the application. Automotive, we don't use solar cells. For the signage, because the image is glowing itself, we can reduce the energy consumption by a factor of 4 up to 20 times. And that allows us with 2 very small solar cells, for instance, to create the security signs that are completely off-grid.
Quite impressive. There's a big market for you, I presume.
There's a huge opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I was also wondering, because there is such a huge market, do you have any idea why this hasn't been thought of before?
Yeah, it's a good question. And if you look at our company logo, Lusoco, it actually stands for Luminescent Solar Concentrator. It's a technology developed in the 60s, but most people there are actually focusing on the energy harvesting aspect. How much watts, how many kilowatts can we generate with this technology? And especially with the cheap price of solar cells, we will never be able to compete in this market. However, by making use of the printing technology together with the glowing effect, we found out that most customers are more interested in the glowing effect rather than the energy harvesting. And that is really the part where we are focusing on, to make sure that we can benefit as much from that as possible. And the energy harvesting part is just an extra thing. We focus on how can we use the energy rather than how much energy can we generate.
Okay, interesting. Any more questions?
That was a very clear talk.
Exactly, yeah, it was wonderful. I'm going to check if there's anything on YouTube. Nothing? Okay, cool.
One chat question in the Zoom.
I think that was just a previous... Anyway, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, Jeroen, for the presentation and answering our questions. You're very welcome to come to the Kazerne again when you're better. And we can continue talking about this at the bar later on. You're also welcome to have dinner at the meetup table. Take into mind that the prices have changed, so a meat and fish meal will cost $19.50 and vegetarian meal $17.50. take a look at the website for the program for the upcoming weeks, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Also for the people online, thank you for watching, and you're very welcome to come live. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Good luck and hope to see you next time.